Welcome to channel. Today, we explore story filled with unexpected twists. Please, subscribe and like to stay updated. Let's begin. I've always thought I had the ideal existence, not in the grandiose movie-like sense of big gestures and immaculate romances, but in the plain, true manner that life frequently gives satisfaction. I had a secure house, a rewarding work, a lovely wife, and a kid whom I was really proud of. Lucas, 18, was quick-witted and fiercely independent. His rebellious behavior disturbed me at times, but I reminded myself that it was common for his age. He was very brilliant, almost too knowledgeable for his age, and had an uncanny capacity to comprehend events fully. I frequently joked that he appeared to have lived two lives. Then there was Emily, my wife, whom I had loved for over 2 decades, radiant, attractive, and strong-willed. She made life seem uncomplicated. I fully trusted her. She was my child's mother, my partner, and my safe haven. But I was mistaken about everything. Everything went apart on Saturday morning. As I sat with my coffee and newspaper, I heard a crisp, forceful tap on the door. The sight of red and blue lights flashing outside sent shivers down my spine. My intuition warned me something was really wrong. Opening the door, I saw 2 uniformed cops standing stiffly on my doorstep, their emotions inscrutable. Behind them, a police vehicle sat idling at the curb. Mr. Harrison, the taller cop, inquired, his wide shoulders and hard glare heightening my anxiety. "Yes," I said, my voice straining. "We have a warrant for the arrest of Lucas Harrison." I blinked, trying to make sense of the words. "I'm sorry, what?" Emily arrived behind me, her robes snugly knotted, and her controlled demeanor concealed a flare of something in her eyes that I couldn't quite identify. The second cop, who was shorter and had shaved his head, proceeded. "Your son has been charged with financial fraud and embezzlement. He's accused of stealing $500,000 from Harrison and Partners." The world seemed to tilt, its edges blurring as amazement rushed over me. Lucas. Fraud. Embezzlement. My youngster couldn't even fib convincingly about missing homework. I gasped out, thinking that this must be a mistake. Ryan wouldn't. "We have sufficient evidence," the taller officer said, giving me a printed paper with a copy of the warrant, bank transactions, surveillance video, and a signed confession letter. "We need to take him in." My breath caught. When I looked toward the stairs, Lucas was already standing at the top, completely clothed, his hands carelessly tucked into his pockets. He did not seem shocked. If anything, he seems amused. "Don't worry, Dad," he murmured quietly. "I've already turned the tables on her." Emily took a short gasp beside me just as his words had barely registered. When I turned to face her, the spark in her eyes transformed into something unmistakable: shame. The truth hit me like a freight train. My wife had done this, and my kid knew all along. Time appeared to stop. My heart hammered in my chest as I stood in my own house, gazing at the lady with whom I had made a life. Her hands clasped at the sides. Lucas, the child I thought I knew so well, remained oddly calm, as if his incarceration were a little inconvenience. I opened my lips to speak, but nothing came out. I studied Emily's expression, hoping for an explanation, a denial, something. She stayed mute. Lucas, however, grinned. "You really think ID let her get away with it?" he said calmly. The cops exchanged anxious looks. They had anticipated a routine arrest, but Lucas' calm manner caught them off guard. It threw me off, too. "Ryan, what the hell is going on?" I eventually managed to ask. He exhaled gently, as if he were waiting for the inquiry. "Mom's been screwing over a lot of people," he added, his gaze shifting to Emily. "I guess she thought I'd be the easiest one to screw over next." Emily flinched, her face paler. My chest clenched. "Emily," I asked, but she said nothing. The taller cop groaned angrily. "Sir, we need to take your son in now. If there's anything he wants to say, he can do so at the station." Lucas did not protest as they cuffed him. He displayed no fear or hesitation, only an unpleasant smile pointed right at Emily. Emily, my wife and partner, remained still as they escorted him out the door, without saying anything. Something inside me broke. The treachery went further than I had ever thought. My legs felt like lead as I approached her. My voice was low and harsh. "What have you done?" She swallowed hard, but before she could react, her phone vibrated in her pocket. She disregarded it, and that was when I realized. Whatever Lucas had put into action scared her. I looked out the window and saw Lucas go into the rear of the police cruiser. He didn't look at me. His attention was fixated on Emily, and the emotion on his face chilled me. He was not scared. She was. I had no clue why, and I was about to find out. The front door snapped shut, leaving only the two of us standing in stunned quiet. My heart beat so loudly in my ears that I couldn't hear myself speak. "What the hell did you do, Emily?" I shouted, my tone firm despite the rage rising inside me. She stared at me, first indignant, then terrified. "You don't understand," she muttered. "Then explain." Her lips opened, but no words emerged. The pause was all I needed to confirm my suspicions. Lucas had been correct. She'd done this. Lucas said had already turned the tables on you. I insisted, getting closer. What did he mean? She tensed, but kept quiet. I clenched my hands, rage rushing through me. Lucas is accused of stealing $500,000 from your firm. But let's think about this, Emily. How does an 18-year-old with no access to your work, no knowledge of your accounts, and no connections to Harrison and Partners manage to pull off fraud at that level? Her phone buzzed again, and she flinched. A genuine, undeniable twitch. I had a look into her pocket. "Who's calling?" I asked. She didn't respond. A scary notion entered my head. Without thinking, I grabbed the phone from her grasp. "Ethan, give it back," she yelled, lunging for me, but I put up a hand to stop her. The screen said unknown number. The call terminated, only to be followed by another from the same number. I responded. There was stillness for a time, followed by a distorted voice, cold and mechanical, that resonated across the line. "You should have let your son take the fall, Emily. Now it's you they're looking for." The call ended, leaving an unsettling vacuum. I glanced at the phone, my thoughts racing, and then returned my eyes to my wife, who had become deathly pale. She knew who had just phoned. Lucas had not only turned the tables on her, he had revealed something far greater. "You framed our son to protect someone else, didn't you?" I said, my tone dangerously low. She gulped hard. "Ethan, you set him up," I interrupted her, leaning closer. "You handed our son over to the police because whoever you're working with needed a scapegoat, and you were willing to sacrifice Lucas to save your own skin." She opened her lips to speak, but I hadn't finished. "Lucas knew," I murmured softly, just above a whisper. "He saw this coming. He did something before they could pin it on him. And now I've lifted her phone. Your little scheme just backfired." Emily shook her head furiously. "Ethan, listen to me. I didn't have a choice." I let out a sour chuckle. "No choice. You were his mother. He trusted you. I was trying to protect him," she shouted, her voice breaking with anger. I scoffed. "You call that protection?" She walked back and forth, shakily running her fingers through her hair. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she said hurriedly. "Lucas told me it was just a precaution. If the firm started digging into the missing money, they needed a scapegoat. It was supposed to be temporary, just enough to redirect attention. But Lucas..." She froze and gripped the edge of the sofa. "Lucas what?" I asked. Her mouth clenched firmly. "He found out. Of course he did." Lucas had always been one step ahead. Instead than fleeing or cowering in terror like any other adolescent, he took action. I flipped the phone over in my fingers, my thoughts racing. Emily still had not addressed the most important question. "Where's the money?" Emily's gaze shifted to me. "What?" I took a steady, deliberate step forward, my heart pounding in my ears. The $500,000 Lucas was accused of laundering. If he didn't take it, that means it was stolen. So who took it? Her hesitancy was an adequate response. And then I saw it. The spark of remorse, the wordless admittance. My stomach turned. "It was you," I murmured. She exhaled shakily and slumped onto the sofa. "It wasn't just me," she said gently. "Nathan orchestrated it. I helped move the funds. We set up offshore accounts. Just enough to..." She trailed off, realizing she had said too much. However, it was already too late. The lady I had built my life with, the mother of my kid, had stolen $500,000 from her own company. When the walls closed in on her, she framed Lucas to protect herself. Lucas must have seen everything happening. He must have discovered the truth before she could set her trap. And now Emily was the one being pursued. I tightened my teeth and gripped the phone so tightly that my knuckles became white. What exactly did Lucas do? Her head shot up, and terror flashed over her eyes. "Ethan, whatever he did, you need to stop him." The phone vibrated again. This time, the message was a text. I switched the screen to face Emily. Her face became pale as she read it. "Check your account, Emily. The money's in your name now. Hope you have a good lawyer." Lucas. He had diverted the monies, putting the whole crime back on her. She shrieked, grabbing the phone from my grasp and hastily clicking on the banking app. Her eyes widened in terror as the reality dawned. The front door slammed open. Two guys in suits walked inside, displaying badges. Emily Harrison. One of them stated sharply, "You're under arrest for financial fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy." She did not fight. She simply sat there, staring at the television, while reality crashed down. The cops handcuffed her and read her rights. I didn't feel anything. No pity or sadness, just a cold, spooky reality. Lucas had outplayed us all. As the cops closed the door behind them, the weight of stillness weighed down on me. My wife, whom I had trusted for over 2 decades, was no longer with us, arrested for crimes I hadn't even imagined. Lucas had disclosed everything, and one idea rang through my mind. What else was my kid capable of doing? I tightened my grasp on Emily's phone and scrolled through her texts and emails, attempting to fit everything together. Then I noticed the name Nathan Foster. I knew him. Emily's supervisor. Managing partner of Harrison and Partners. A strong guy who demanded attention the instant he walked into a room. The kind who did not reach the top without treading on others. The kind that would sacrifice anybody to save himself. My stomach churned as I read their emails. "Nathan, the money's been moved. We need to keep the focus off me. You know what to do." "Emily, I don't know if I can go through with this." "Yes, you can. Lucas is perfect for this. He's young. The police will think he's just an amateur, caught up in something he didn't understand. He'll get a lighter sentence." "Emily, Ethan will never forgive me. Ethan doesn't need to know. Just stick to the plan." Rage clogged my eyes as I realized Emily had not been coerced or pushed. She had chosen the treachery. She understood precisely what she was doing by pulling Lucas into their situation. I kept scrolling through communications, revealing evidence of illegal transactions, fake paperwork, and legal loopholes Nathan had utilized to siphon money out of the company. It was not a one-time crime, but rather a planned plot that had been ongoing for months. When the business began digging too deeply, they needed a scapegoat. Lucas had been an easy target. I tightened my teeth and pushed myself to breathe. I had to speak with Lucas, the one person who had seen this coming long before I did. I grabbed my vehicle keys and headed directly to the police station. Lucas sat at a metal table, utterly relaxed, his hands lazily lying in his lap. He didn't seem concerned in the least. When I entered, he grinned. "You figured it out, huh?" I sat down across from him and studied his features. "You tell me." Lucas slumped back in his chair. "Let me guess. Mom's in cuffs?" I nodded firmly. He gave a quiet laugh. "Good. That was faster than I expected." I exhaled loudly and screamed, "Lucas, you need to tell me everything now." He cocked his head, as if wondering whether I deserved the truth. Then, as if determining ID earned it, he leaned forward and rested his elbows on the table. "It started months ago," he said. "I noticed Mom getting secretive, always on her phone, sneaking off to meet someone late at night. She started lying about little things, so I followed her. One night, that's when I saw her with Nathan." My stomach constricted. "It wasn't just business, Dad. She was sleeping with him." The words struck me like a freight train. Deep down, I felt there was more to this than just money, but hearing it out still took me out. Lucas gave me a chance to process the revelation. "I didn't say anything at first," he said. "I wanted to see how far she'd go. So I started tracking her texts, her emails. I hacked into her work computer. That's when I saw everything. Fake invoices, offshore accounts, redirected funds. They'd been stealing for months." I swallowed hard. "And the setup?" Lucas grinned cruelly. "They needed a fall guy. I was the perfect target. A dumb kid with no real power. An easy case to close." He leaned forward. "So, I let them think they had me." My fist tightened. "You allowed them?" He shrugged. "If I ran, I would seem guilty. If I challenged her, she'd figure up another method to set me up. I needed her to follow through." Shaking my head in surprise, I said, "You let yourself get arrested?" "It was part of the strategy," he said nonchalantly. "I wanted her to believe she had one. Then I turned it on her before she knew it was coming." A horrible realization came over me. "You snatched the money back?" Lucas' eyes glittered. "Not just that. I made it seem as if it was never taken in the first place. I removed my name from everything, transferred the money to her accounts, and sent all proof to the firm's board. Nathan's name is associated with every transaction." My pulse pounded. "Lucas, Nathan isn't some shady lawyer. He is dangerous. He has people." Lucas nodded grudgingly. "Yeah, and they'll be coming for him now." I ran my fingers down my face. Jesus Christ. Relax, Dad, Lucas remarked quietly. I have buried my tracks. The authorities are now solely looking for Nathan. What if Nathan comes after you? Lucas' smirk faded slightly. Then we make sure he doesn't get the chance. Before I could push him more, the station door slid open, and an officer entered. Mr. Harrison, he replied, gesturing at me. You are free to take your kid home. New evidence has just cleared him of all charges. Lucas rose up and stretched. See? I told you it would work. My thoughts raced as we walked out of the station. My kid had just outmaneuvered his mother, her employer, and a whole criminal plan. He had strolled into a trap, while knowing that he would be able to exploit it. I stared at Lucas as he slid into my car's passenger seat. He didn't seem scared or relieved, but rather content, which bothered me more than anything else. What now? I inquired as I started the engine. Lucas looked out the window, his face darkening. Now we wait. For what? For Nathan to make his next move. For the first time since the horror started, I wasn't sure who to dread more, Nathan or my own kid. The ride home was quiet. Too quiet. Lucas gazed out the window, fingers drumming absently on his knee. I was tense. My wife had framed our son. My son had seen it coming and somehow outplayed her. But there was something else, something Lucas wasn't telling me. I saw it in his eyes at the station. He wasn't just relieved to be cleared. He was satisfied. And that terrified me. Lucas, I eventually murmured, my voice firm. I need you to be honest with me. He did not turn to look at me. I have been. No, I shook my head. You've told me what you want me to know, but there are other details you're keeping out. Things I need to comprehend. He exhaled. Like, what? So, how long have you known about your mother's affair? His fingers had ceased tapping. I don't know, he confessed. A while. I gulped. And you didn't tell me? What would you have done? He inquired plainly. If he had come to me months ago with suspicions of Emily cheating, would I have believed him or rejected it as paranoia? I opened my lips but closed it again, unable to respond. Lucas nodded, as if he understood my silence. Exactly. I inhaled sharply. So you dug into it yourself. He shrugged. Like I said, Mom was concealing stuff. I just connected the dots. I drove into our street but parked a block away, hesitant to go inside without hearing the whole tale. Lucas, I replied cautiously, turning to face I know you're smart, probably more than both of us combined. But returning the money to your mother and submitting the proof to the firm's board? It wasn't just instinct. His countenance remained unchanged, but I sensed strain in his jaw. You knew they were going to frame you, right? The muscle in his cheek trembled. I had a feeling, he said, but I wasn't certain until I read the false confession letter. I gazed at him. And you weren't scared? Lucas' lips twisted into a slight smile. Dad, I hacked into her bank accounts and rerouted $500,000 before they even noticed. You think I was scared of a few cops? I clenched my teeth. That's not the point. No, Lucas said. The point is, I had to do it. You weren't going to stop her, and if I let her get away with it, she would have kept going. Maybe to me. Maybe to you. He turned to face me directly, his blue eyes inscrutable in the low streetlight. You're mad because I didn't tell you sooner. But deep down, you know I was right. I looked at him, my chest constricting. He was correct. I had been blind, dismissing all the warning signals and convinced myself that Emily was still the woman I married. Lucas saw the truth long before I did. I ran my palm over my face and sighed deeply. Lucas, this isn't a game. Nathan is dangerous. Lucas' smirk disappeared. I know. I frowned. What aren't you telling me? He paused before digging into his jacket pocket and taking out a flash drive. I grabbed it, my fingertips chilly against the metal. What's on this? He exhaled a breath. Proof. I narrowed my eyes. Proof of what? Lucas held my eyes, his words firm. That Nathan isn't just stealing from the firm. He's laundering money for the cartel. The words struck me like a freight train. My heartbeat sounded in my ears. What? Lucas nodded grudgingly. I found bank statements, offshore accounts, wire transfers disguised as legal fees. Nathan's been washing dirty money for years. I grabbed the wheel so tightly that my knuckles became white. Jesus Christ. Lucas shrugged. I was going to use it as leverage, but I had to be careful. If I pushed too hard, he'd know I was onto him. A shudder went down my spine. Do they know? Lucas was quiet for a long time before eventually stating, I think so. Cold dread settled in my gut. Nathan wasn't only a crooked executive. He was in bed with murderers. And Lucas had just made himself an enemy. I turned the key in the ignition. We need to get out of here. Lucas frowned. What? Where? I didn't respond straight away because the fact was that I didn't know. I simply knew we could not remain. Not when Nathan's people may arrive. Not when Lucas had unwittingly placed a bullseye on his own back. And not when, for the first time, I wasn't just terrified of them. I was concerned about what my kid had previously done and what he might be prepared to do next. The highway stretched ahead, deserted but for the odd headlamp flashing in the opposing lane. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. Lucas sat next to me, calmly. Too calm. Had just informed me that Nathan Foster, my wife's employer, lover, and the guy she had framed our kid to protect, was laundering money for the cartel, and Lucas had evidence. Proof that might save or kill us. I took a glimpse at him, the dashboard lights illuminating his face. He was not nervous. He was not afraid. He was pondering. That terrified me more than anything. What's going through your mind? I said, attempting to maintain a calm tone. Lucas grinned gently, but it did not reach his eyes. Wondering how long it'll take before Nathan realizes what I did. The muscle in my jaw trembled. You mean before he realizes you pinned everything on him? Lucas cocked his head. Not everything. I gave a harsh chuckle. Oh no. You rerouted $500,000 into his private offshore account. You sent the firm's board proof of financial fraud, and now you're sitting on evidence that could bring down an entire criminal network. I clutched the wheel even tighter. I'd say that's everything. Lucas did not flinch. It's what he deserved. I breathed hard and dragged a palm over my face. Lucas, this isn't a game. You think you're just moving pieces on a chessboard, but Nathan isn't just a corrupt lawyer. He's connected. People like him don't go to prison, and they sure as hell don't roll over and accept defeat. Lucas' expression clouded. I know. I narrowed my eyes. Then why do I feel like you still have another card up your sleeve? He paused before reaching inside his sweatshirt pocket and pulling out a burner phone. I frowned. What's that? Lucas unlocked it by tapping through a few menus before turning it towards me. My blood became chilly. The television displayed a live stream from what seemed to be an affluent office, Harrison and Partners. However, this was not a regular recording. It was a hack. The camera was focused straight at Nathan's office, where he was pacing madly. Across from him on the sofa sat another guy with cartel tattoos. Jesus Christ, I whispered, tightening my grip on the wheel. Lucas, what did you do? Lucas leaned back. I sent Nathan a little warning. My breath caught. What kind of warning? His lips curved into a non-smiley expression. Let's just say he's currently under the impression the cartel thinks he stole the money. My stomach sank. I slammed on the brakes, bringing the vehicle onto the shoulder. The tires slid briefly before coming to a halt. I looked to Lucas, my heart racing. You made it look like Nathan robbed the cartel? Lucas shrugged. I needed to buy us time. I ran my fingers through my hair, trying to breathe. Lucas, do you have any idea what that means? Lucas' eyes remained steady. Yeah, Dad. It means Nathan isn't looking for me anymore. I looked at him, shocked. He was correct. For now, at least. But it also implied something worse. Nathan was going to become a very desperate guy. Desperate guys were hazardous. I returned to the phone, seeing Nathan run a shaking hand through his hair. The cartel member seated opposite from him seemed calm. Too calm. Despite the fact that the transmission was silent, he talked in measured tones. Nathan's face became wider with each syllable. They think he took the money, I murmured. Lucas offered a brief nod. I made sure of it. My jaw clenched. And what happens when they realize he didn't? Lucas' smirk disappeared. They'll start looking for the real thief, he said softly. I let out a quick gasp. And you don't think Nathan's going to point them straight at you? Lucas cocked his head slightly. I hope he does. The chilling confidence in his words froze me in place. I caught his stare, and my chest tightened. Why the hell would you want that? Because then, Lucas said calmly, you'll know exactly when they're coming. I ran both palms over my face, trying to figure out what my 18-year-old son had become, a strategist in a deadly game against the cartel. It wasn't simply about exposing Emily anymore. It wasn't just about Nathan. Lucas has entered a world where errors cost lives. I restarted the vehicle and drove back onto the highway. We need a plan. Lucas nodded gently. We already have one. I frowned. We do? He smirked slightly. Yeah. I didn't like the appearance. By the time we drove into the driveway, I was certain I needed a hard drink. The home was dark and quiet. Emily's absence loomed over everything like a ghost. Lucas entered first, extending his arms. It'll be in my room, he responded, as casually as if nothing had happened. Not yet, I firmly said, seizing his arm before he could flee upstairs. He groaned but did not protest as I led him into the living area. We sat across from one another, tension heavy between us. "No more games," I commanded. "Tell me exactly what you did." Lucas breathed slowly. "Fine then," he answered, laying everything down. He had hacked Nathan's accounts weeks before, tracking every step. He learned of Emily's participation and waited for her to make the first mistake. Anticipating being framed, he had previously revised the money trail. Finally, when Nathan began seeking for a way out, Lucas made sure the cartel knew about him first. "Now Nathan's in survival mode," Lucas said. "He'll do whatever it takes to clear his name." I let out a quick gasp. "Which means?" Lucas' expression stiffened. "He's either going to run or tie up loose ends." A shiver went down my spine. "Loose ends," I mumbled. "Like us." Lucas nodded grudgingly. My thoughts raced. We had just turned the tables on Nathan Foster, but in doing so, we had created a huge bullseye on our back. My phone suddenly vibrated. My gut wrenched when I saw the caller ID. "Emily." Lucas grinned. "Right on time. You knew she'd call?" I questioned, my eyes hardening. He nodded. "She just realized what I did." I paused before responding. "Sophia?" Her voice sounded frantic. Terrified. "Ethan, please, you have to help me. I made a mistake." A loud blast abruptly cut her short. Then another. My blood ran cold. The call went dead. I carefully lowered the phone, my heart thumping in my ears. Lucas leaned forwards. "What happened?" I responded, my voice strained. "Nathan just made his next move." Ryan's smirk reappeared. "Good. So did we." I gazed at him, aware with frightening certainty that Ryan had not just turned the tables. He was 5 moves ahead. The stillness after Emily's call was oppressive, and the phone seemed heavier than it should have, weighted down by all that had just transpired. Lucas sat calmly across from me, as if this were just another day. "Nathan just tried to take her out," I told him. Lucas stretched lazily. "Took him long enough," he remarked casually, sending shivers down my spine. My jaw clenched. "Lucas, your mother might be dead." He did not flinch. "I know." I looked at him incredulously. "Doesn't that worry you?" He cocked his head, carefully. "What bothers me more," he told me, "is that she called you for help." His sneer has returned. Guess she figured out Nathan wasn't coming to save her. Rage raced through me, but I pushed it down. "We need to find out what happened," I replied, my voice tightening with fury. Lucas cast me a knowing glance. "Do you already know?" I asked harshly. He took out his phone, tapped it a few times, and then pointed it toward me. A blurry surveillance video showed a parking garage, Emily's vehicle parked in the middle of the frame, the driver's side door wide open, and she lay sprawled on the ground, unresponsive. I took in a breath. Jesus Christ. Lucas' expression was inscrutable as he carefully observed my response. "She's not dead," he said. I turned swiftly. "How do you know?" He zoomed closer on the screen, pointing at her chest. Still breathing. Barely. I looked back at the screen, and he was correct. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven movements, and a dark stain spread across her blouse, pooling on the concrete beneath her. She'd been shot but not killed, which meant one of two things. Nathan's men were sloppy, or they left her alive on purpose. I clenched my fist. "Where is this?" I asked. "Downtown parking structure near Nathan's firm." I shot up. "We're going." Lucas did not move. I turned to him with burning eyes. "Lucas." He met my eyes evenly. "Why?" I froze. Lucas leaned forward and rested his elbows on his knees. "She framed me," he said, his voice icy and emotionless. "She was going to let me rot in prison to save herself and her boyfriend." His voice was bland, with no hint of concern. "She made her decision," he said. "She chose Nathan, and now he has flung her away. Why should we worry what happens to her?" I inhaled hard, attempting to control my fury. "Because she's still your mother," was my response. Lucas held contact with me for a long, uncomfortable time before pocketing his phone and stepping up. "Fine," he acknowledged, but his tone was cautionary. "But don't say I didn't warn you." When we arrived, the site was almost empty, with faint flickering lights creating long, frightening shadows over the pavement. Emily was slumped on the ground, her breathing weak, and I raced to her side, squatted down. "Emily." I gently shook her, my voice strong but urgent. Her eyes flickered faintly, and her face seemed ghostly pale. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice scarcely audible. I looked down to see her injury. The bullet had grazed her ribs, leaving a deep, nasty gash. She was bleeding, but not as much as I had feared. Lucas stood a few steps away, observing quietly. Emily's shaking fingers grasped my sleeve loosely. He set me up, she whispered, straining to breathe. Nathan said I was a liability. I gritted my teeth. Of course he did, I said coldly. Her gaze flashed to Lucas. You did this, she said. Lucas curved his lips into a smug look. I did, he said without apology. I just didn't think I'd act this fast. Shock swept across me. What the heck, Lucas? He shrugged lazily. I wanted to see how long it would take before he dumped her like everyone else he's used. My stomach turned with amazement. Lucas had foreseen this and allowed it to happen. Emily's breathing quickened as she clung to awareness. Please, her voice trembled as she focused entirely on me. Ethan, please don't let them kill me. I glanced down at the woman I had once loved, the woman who had lied, deceived me, and framed my son, but she was still Lucas' mother, and I couldn't forsake her. I looked to Lucas with determination. We're taking her with us. His grin faded to annoyance. Are you kidding? He said, evidently opposed. No, I said firmly. He breathed hard and rubbed his temples in frustration. Fine, he said, but don't think this changes anything. Ignoring his sarcasm, I gently assisted Emily to her feet. She groaned, leaning heavily on me as we went toward the vehicle. Lucas took out his phone and began texting quickly. I frowned. What are you doing? Lucas' smile reappeared as he flashed the screen at me, sending a single text message to an unknown number. Try again. I dare you. My breath became locked in my throat. Lucas, I said wearily. What did you just do? He responded smugly. Sent Nathan a little message. A icy shiver went down my spine. You asked him to come after us? Lucas' expression did not change. Yep. Fear and hatred raged inside me, but I maintained my calm. Do you really understand what it means? I demanded. Lucas leaned back lazily. It means he's already thinking about how to get rid of us. I clenched my jaw. So, are you inviting him? Lucas shrugged again. I'm setting a trap. This isn't a movie, I said. This is real life. Lucas' grin disappeared and his voice became unnaturally quiet. I understand, Dad. But Nathan made a mistake. My eyes narrowed. What mistake? Lucas leaned forwards, his voice low. He underestimated us. An hour later, Emily was sleeping on the sofa, pale and weak from blood loss, while Lucas waited by the window, scanning the street like a predator looking for prey. I joined him, my stomach twisted in knots. How do you know he's coming? I asked. Lucas nodded. I know. My throat was dry. Are we ready? Lucas smirked slightly. We're always ready. I turned to gaze at my son, the youngster I had nurtured, now outmaneuvering a deadly criminal, and for the first time, I wondered whether I had genuinely undervalued Nathan or Ryan. Something in his words sent shivers down my spine. The house was too quiet, the disconcerting type of stillness before a storm. I immediately felt for the revolver concealed in my study, while Lucas stood by the window, arms crossed, serene and unyielding. How do you know he's coming? I asked. Because I invited him, Lucas responded, smirking. I tightened my teeth as headlights shone through the darkness outside. Lucas did not flinch. Instead, he rolled his shoulders, as if he were about to play a game. I grabbed his arm. Lucas, relax whatever you're planning, I urged. We have control. Lucas remained calm as Nathan's car pulled into the driveway, headlights cutting across the yard. Nathan stepped out, disheveled, his suit and wild hair making him look nothing like the arrogant lawyer I remembered, and he appeared desperate. Two men in dark clothing followed him, their demeanor screaming danger. Lucas didn't flinch. He touched his phone, and floodlights burst outside, stopping Nathan and his men in their tracks. Checkmate. My grip on the pistol tightened. What have you done? Lucas touched the screen again. Remember when I hacked Nathan's account? I nodded slowly. I didn't simply transfer money. I found security footage. He turned the phone toward me, and the video started, showing Nathan standing over Ruiz's dead corpse, blood splashed on his beautiful suit. Lucas touched the screen again. Uploading to. Who? I whispered. Lucas' smirk broadened. Everyone. Nathan's phone rang, and his face paled as he read the message. He turned to his guys, a look of terror on his face. Lucas inclined his head, mockingly. Oops. Nathan clenched his fist. You little. Lucas moved forward, his voice chilly. You came here believing you had power and could intimidate us. But you don't understand you've died. One of Nathan's guys grabbed for a pistol, and Lucas laughed grimly. Bad move. As three black SUVs screeched onto the street, Cutting off Nathan's escape, sirens pierced the night, and FBI agents poured out, guns drawn and shouting commands. Within moments, Nathan Foster, the man who had once controlled everything, was face down on the pavement, handcuffs clicking around his wrists. Lucas stood next to me, calm and cool. I exhaled shakily while still holding the pistol. "It's over." Lucas grinned slightly. "Game over." He turned to face me, his hands jammed into pockets. "Told you we were in control," he answered quietly. The FBI was still outside as Lucas and I sat in the living room, and he drank his cola as if nothing had occurred. I closely observed him. "So, was that your plan?" I asked. He shrugged. "We couldn't run. Nathan would have pursued us. So I baited him, ensured the FBI got all they needed." I breathed slowly. "And Emily?" Lucas' smirk disappeared. "She made her choice, Dad." My throat clenched. "Do you believe she will go to prison?" His expression clouded. "I hope so." I gazed at him. This wasn't just about survival for Lucas, it was personal. I couldn't tell whether Lucas had just outplayed Nathan, or if this was who he had always been. He looked at his phone, his smirk returning. "Looks like Nathan's friends aren't too happy with him." My blood became chilly. "What does that mean?" Lucas stretched lazily. "It means we're not done yet." I grabbed my temples, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened. We had won this war. Nathan was in FBI custody, Emily was out of the picture, and the cartel's money trail had been uncovered, yet Lucas was not rejoicing. He was already thinking about his next move. That worried me more than anything. The flashing red and blue lights from the FBI cars outside danced across the walls, but Lucas appeared unconcerned, as if everything had been preordained. I leaned forwards. "Lucas, tell me the truth." He raised an eyebrow. "About what? How long have you planned this?" He cocked his head carefully. "Since the moment I found out about Mom." My breath caught. "That was months ago." He nodded. "Yeah." I shake my head. "You're telling me that you planned for this from the moment you knew she was working with Nathan?" Lucas curved his lips into a smile. "Yeah." I scoffed. "You could have come to me." He shrugged. "You wouldn't have believed me." I opened my lips, then closed it. He was correct. I had disregarded the signs, late nights, secrecy, and told myself that my wife would not betray us. But Lucas had seen the reality, and instead of facing it or fleeing, he laid a trap. Nathan was now in arrest, the cartel's plan was in disarray, and Emily was almost dead. It should have been over. Lucas' phone vibrated again. I frowned. "Who are you speaking to?" He smirked as he looked at the screen. "Nathan's replacement." My stomach sank. "What do you mean by replacement?" Lucas sighed, bored. "You didn't assume Nathan was the only one, did you?" I ran my fingers down my face. "The cartel doesn't put all their eggs in one basket." Lucas did not glance up from his phone. "Now they're coming for him." I tensed. "You made him a target." Lucas' eyes glittered. "He made himself a target. I just pushed things in the proper way." I gritted my teeth. "Do you know what happens to those who betray the cartel?" Lucas reclined back, unconcerned. "Yep." I swallowed hard. "Are you cool with that?" He shrugged again. "He deserves worse." A shiver shot down my spine. This wasn't simply vengeance for Lucas, it was justice on his terms. Suddenly, commotion erupted outside. Muffled yells mingled with the blare of distant sirens, and dark figures ran between FBI cars that were now being attacked. Lucas stood alongside me, arms folded, as if he knew what was about to happen. "What have you done?" I demanded, my heart pounding. Lucas grinned. "I promised Nathan I'd turn the tables." "People are dying right now," I said. Lucas did not blink. "Yeah, they're bad people." I grasped his shoulders. "That's not for you to decide." He returned my look, cold and calculating. "Why not?" I looked at him, my throat dry. Lucas backed away, staring back at the turmoil outside. "The FBI will handle the cleanup," he said simply. "This isn't clean," I muttered. "You just started a war." Lucas' smirk did not vanish. "They would have done the same to us." My chest constricted. Lucas had started this, and he felt no remorse, just triumph. "What now?" I inquired, my voice husky. Lucas' sneer became colder. "Now we wait." "For what?" His expression was unreadable. "The next game." Emily was condemned to 20 years in jail and never met my eyes throughout the trial, but when she saw Lucas, she trembled. Nathan had died as a result of an internal cartel conflict, and Lucas had organized his demise off the record. And Lucas? He prospered. Top of his class, no record, no suspicions, just a normal 18-year-old. But he wasn't. Sometimes I saw him observing others, calculating, studying, and waiting. Lucas grinned as he got a message from an unknown number on his phone. I realized then that this wasn't over. It never would be. Lucas was no longer simply my son. He was something else totally. The FBI's operation against Nathan Foster and the cartel was unfolding, but it felt like a mere prelude to something bigger, something more dangerous. The world was watching the dramatic arrests, the exposure of a vast criminal network, but Lucas, my son, wasn't celebrating. He wasn't even fully relieved. His eyes still had the same calculating, unnerving gleam they always had. He was playing. The house had become a strange place in the weeks following the trial. It was quieter now, with Emily in prison, and the whole family dynamics had been upended. The empty spaces where her things used to be seemed to scream at me, reminding me of everything I had lost. But Lucas, in his calm, quiet way, continued to carry on as if nothing had happened. There were no apologies, no attempts at normalcy. He had been a step ahead of us all along, and now, it seemed, he was simply moving forward. I had attempted to speak to him numerous times, trying to comprehend the depths of his thinking and the layers of his plan, but each time I sat down to chat with him, it seemed like I was just peeling back a portion of the truth, leaving me wondering what more was concealed underneath. One evening, when I arrived home after a late meeting, I found Lucas in the living room, his eyes fixed to his laptop. The house was gloomy, with the only light coming from the screen in front of him. He didn't glance up as I entered, but I knew he saw my presence. "You've been quiet lately," I interrupted the stillness. He cocked his head slightly, staring at me with a look I couldn't quite place. It wasn't astonishment, it wasn't even acknowledgement. It was something colder, more planned. "I've been busy," he responded, his voice nonchalant. "What are you busy with?" He didn't respond right away, his fingers tapping quickly on the computer, and I remained there, watching him. The child who had once been innocent, who had turned to me for advice, was now the one who had planned the downfall of not just Nathan, but the whole web of corruption. Finally, he closed the laptop with a gentle click and sat back in his chair, his gaze never leaving mine. "You don't understand, do you?" He spoke in a contemptuous tone. "What do you mean?" I answered, my fury rising again. He grinned, that old sneer I had seen so many times before. "You believe everything is about Nathan or Mom, but it isn't. It never was about them. It was always about the broader picture." "What about the big picture?" I echoed, my mind racing. "What are you talking about?" Lucas rose up and walked up to the window. The night outside was dark, with streetlights throwing long shadows over the driveway. His image in the glass was distorted, as if it had been fractured and was slowly stitching itself back together. "The cartel, Dad. They're just a minor fraction of something far bigger. They have connections, power, and influence beyond your comprehension. But they aren't the end point. They're just a tool. I have been accumulating information. I am creating something of my own." My gut constricted. "What have you been doing?" "I've been setting the framework for the next phase," Lucas stated calmly, sending a shiver down my spine. "You thought bringing Nathan down was the last step, but that was just the first move. Now I'm getting ready to take charge of everything." I shook my head, astonishment filling my mind. "Control? What do you mean by control?" He didn't respond right immediately. Instead, he turned back to me, his gaze piercing the silence. "This isn't just about protecting us. It's about creating something better, something that will be unaffected by the corruption that destroyed your career. And once I have power, nothing will be the same again." I felt a surge of worry, a fear I couldn't entirely articulate. "What are you planning, Lucas?" He grinned sweetly. "You'll see. Just know this, Dad, I'm doing it for us. I'm doing it for you, even if you don't realize it yet. I'm creating a legacy that will make everything we've been through worthwhile." I wanted to scream, to tell him that he was on a path he couldn't reverse, that the things he was playing with were too dangerous, too vast for anyone to control, but I couldn't. Deep down, I knew that the boy standing in front of me had already outgrown me, and that terrified me more than anything else. Thank you for watching. Please let us know in the comments, and remember to like and subscribe for more cheating tales.